Welcome back to Open to Truth, a podcast all about exploring big ideas and discovering truth together. My name's Clint.
Hey, I'm Tony. Welcome back.
Today will be a little bit of a tough one. I'm afraid I'll put my foot in my mouth a few times, but
what's new?
I want to talk about some themes related to justice.
Okay.
It's no secret that the term social justice has been on the forefront for a while now. Certainly there are many voices saying a lot about this, a lot of podcasts you could listen to. It's all over the news. I don't mean for this to be the end all be all.
The last word on justice?
By any means at all.
Okay.
You know. But just some things I've been thinking about that I'd like to talk with you about.
Sure.
See what you think.
Yeah, great.
Have a conversation.
Okay.
And see where it goes. My worry, I guess, that's motivating this is, just, I guess, a bit of unclarity regarding the surrounding terms and the philosophical underpinnings thereof.
Okay.
How when we read the word justice or equality or equity or fairness, that just even take a moment right now of self-reflection. What conceptual baggage or framework do I bring to the table when I use any of those words? I mean, the language really means something here.
And certainly those words aren't all synonymous, but I guess for some folks they might be.
I think sometimes they are conflated.
Justice, fairness, equality, equity. Those all seem like, we have different words for different reasons. Those seem like different things to me. I can think my understanding of justice has changed over the years, even just from thinking through the sort of theological lens of, I used to think justice was primarily retributive for a long time, sort of tit for tat. When you do something wrong, you should suffer to the same degree, that you made someone else suffer or whatever that happens to be. And only in the last few years have I started to be more open to a rehabilitative or restorative type of justice that seeks the good of the perpetrator as well as the victim. So I see how even the word justice alone that word can mean different things to different people, which is why oftentimes in theological conversations, I will find that although me and somebody else are using the same word, we're using it in a very different way. And that's why we're not agreeing or seeing eye to eye.
I think maybe this is helpful. One place to start would be to wonder just about, let's scale it back 30,000 foot view, just about morality at all. And why would you think to begin with that justice is a worthwhile concept to take seriously, or that, why are we even saying it rather than good and bad and right and wrong? Why does justice rear its head?
What makes it unique as opposed to just good and bad?
I guess so. Yeah.
That's a good question. When I think about justice, okay, here's something, maybe, if we're trying to discover truth together. When I think about justice, I think about you got two people involved, at least two people involved. And it's not clear to me that when I talk about good and evil, I need two parties.
Okay.
So I can think about good and evil even if I'm the only person on the planet.
Really?
Can
you say more about?
Well, even if we've talked about natural evils before, so, for me to stub my toe, even if I'm the only person on the planet, it's that's all things considered. That's a bad thing.
A malady.
Is it unjust? Well, no, that doesn't feel like the right word for it. We wish that didn't happen. That's bad. It's not good. But with justice, it really does seem like,
So are you saying perhaps, and not that you have to forever say, just as we're saying, that justice is a inherently social term to begin with? It's
well, yes, I do want to say that. Just as I sit here, I can't think of a time when it's useful to use that word outside of talking about persons and or more than one of them.
Well, and it's super interesting as a, even just the language of it, using the term as a noun or perhaps as an adjective, and then even within that, how it's being deployed in sentences. So it can be used as an adjective to refer to a state of affairs, or like the just society, or a just man. What does that mean? But then there's this noun, justice. And what's that? Is that like a state that is achieved if we do certain things, and then justice has been satisfied? That you've heard that
When we say
before.
that, justice has been
or
met.
Justice has been served. That's a noun. It's not an adjective. And there's some, how it's,
Like shalom is a noun,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
Similar kind of thing.
yeah,
I'm just, yeah.
that's funny. Yeah, it is a noun, and it's a thing that can be arrived at or not.
Like a state.
And so,
Okay.
and so you might even ask then further let's just run with this. So let's say justice is a state that can be arrived at or departed from. Is justice the status quo until some poor decisions are made or something doesn't go right and then it becomes unjust?
Yeah.
Or have we just always kind of been in injustice or injustice, and then we're always striving toward justice? This is just an example, like so far, hopefully so far, just in the first few minutes here, all of this is happening underneath the surface of when you read a Coca-Cola ad about achieving social justice. Like,
Right.
wait a minute, dude. What do we even mean by any of this stuff? So hopefully that you'd want to listen to the rest here as we unpack it. But
I can't help but think about this almost in terms of sort of theological terms. You've got, was it Martin Luther King who said the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice? It's this idea, which is, that's a nice
cool.
thing to say. I think the idea there is maybe it isn't that different from shalom, which is kind of why I brought that up, that you just asked what was status quo. In the beginning, at least on the Christian story, in the beginning was shalom. In the beginning was wholeness, goodness. Like,
this is known, what's called as the justice as right order view.
great. Sees where I'm going. He has a name for it. Yes, that.
The rightly ordered cosmos. Is that what justice is?
I think that's how I think about it.
Okay. But then, okay.
What's wrong with
That's
that?
fine. It's fine. It is fine.
But is it?
But it just needs to be teased out more. Like, it didn't suddenly help me to be like, oh, okay, it means rightly ordered. Because I'm
It's just can kicking.
Yeah. Now I need to find out what it means to be rightly ordered.
Okay. Well, okay.
And okay, yeah, let's try.
You brought up some other terms: equity, equality.
So you might be tempted to run with
fairness.
it's fair. At the very least, ordered society is fair, which sounds nice on paper. And we're
No,
taught.
before we even get to
Okay, too soon.
society, you said ordered cosmos a second
I just
ago.
went to society because you had mentioned you feel like it might be a social term.
Yeah,
that
I guess
happens amongst people.
I wanted to see if we're saying a rightly ordered cosmos, if there's just cosmos, should I expect a rightly ordered cosmos to be fair? Does fairness tie with persons the same way justice does? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm trying to work out. Because I could imagine, like when I watch this show alone, people spend hours building a shelter, and then, catching fish or whatever, and then a wolf stole my. Well, that's different because there's maybe an agent there. Let's say I built a shelter and then the wind blew it down. That doesn't feel fair. Something about that. I can imagine there being a sense in me, if I was that person, of the amount of work I put into this has not produced the outcome it ought to have, and something about that feels unfair, even though there's no other persons involved. Does that mean the cosmos isn't rightly ordered? Well,
Unfair, or can you distinguish that between unlucky or unfortunate?
yeah.
And I think the fairness thing almost has to include others.
And in this case, maybe it's a personification of the universe at large. Like, I put in all this work, I did this thing, and you blow over my shelter. You're kind of projecting onto the universe unfair treatment or something when it's actually indifferent.
Or
Maybe that's what it is.
fair. How about another word? Due, undo.
Undo.
I was owed something based on what I had done, and I was not met with what I was owed. So I didn't get what it was due. It wasn't fair because you failed to meet the claim right that I have against you. I have a claim against you, universe,
Yeah.
for certain goods if I work in a certain way.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
but I mean, in some sense, to me, like
It's a social.
it's a bit preposterous.
Yeah.
The notion of I don't know, maybe I'm totally off, but of a non-personal universe or cosmos having any
Yeah, no, that's right.
feelings.
That's right.
Toward, yeah.
The only reason we went down that
Yeah.
tangent was me trying to work out if fairness is social the same way justice is. But yeah, it seems to be.
Yeah. And of course that story assumes there are these quid pro quo type of activities where if I do this, then I'll be rewarded in this
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah, yeah.
it seems like it doesn't always turn out that way. So
Yeah.
does that necessarily mean injustice or just is it unfortunate, a malady?
Yeah. So in the social world, in terms of fairness, it does seem like there's plenty of situations where things are legitimately unfair, right?
Yeah. So here's a funny example. There's this thing called the Schwitz in Cleveland. It's like a Jewish Russian bathhouse. Men only. You get naked. You
Yep.
go in a big steam room. It's like 200 degrees. It's awesome. You go in a cold pool. You eat steak and drink and smoke cigars. You call it a day. All right.
It's a good time if you're into that.
If you're into that, you might wonder, why do you have to be naked?
I do.
You just have to. You don't
I
get
wonder
it.
every time.
So, but what really gets me, I think it's hysterical. You go up to pay, and the guy in front of you could have gotten the exact same things. Like, I did the Schwitz, I got the extra large steak, and whatever. Same thing as you, and you might end up paying $50 more than that guy.
Really? He
Yep.
just charges you more.
That's right.
And you don't know why? No reason given?
He might not have liked how you looked at him. Or maybe you don't come as often. You're a new guest.
And there's no prices on anything before
There's
you...
no price. No, there's no menu.
No.
So he'll just say, okay, $160. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, 80. And you did the same thing. You're like, hey, but, and then don't say it because you'll end up paying more.
Yeah.
He'll be okay. Now it's 180. So just here as an example, at first blush, that seems unfair. Like, I received the same services as that guy. Why I should have to pay the same amount?
Yes.
How does that strike you?
I agree. It strikes me as unfair.
Okay, but now
It would strike me as more unfair if there were menus and prices published everywhere. You know, and then you were getting charged more. This seems like the rules of the transaction are hidden from sight the whole time. So
yeah, and I wonder if other examples we try to give about things that are unfair actually have this as well. So one unspoken part of the deal in the Schwitz example is one of the inputs to what the price will be is, what does the cashier think of you? Now, you may not like that.
Yeah.
And in which case, maybe you don't return to the Schwitz in the future, or now that you know about that, you may not go at all. But is that really unfair? I mean, that's one of the things, and you pay more now. The rubric is what I happen to think, and I don't like you as much.
The difference there is, though, the way most businesses work is not that way. So
yeah, of course.
customers are primed to have the experience of equal service and payment across the board, and then business happens to be the one exception with a bunch of hidden rules that aren't publicized anywhere, and he doesn't like the way I look. And okay, he's within it. It's his business. He can charge whatever he wants. I wish I had known up front. I do feel a little bit duped.
Yeah.
I feel unfairly treated.
Yeah.
So
Do you have another case that you can think of a paradigmatically unfair situation?
the one that comes to mind, actually, I guess it's fairly similar, is actually the parable of the talents. Oh, the laborers. These dudes who come and work in the Bible.
Yeah.
So he's hiring laborers, and he goes out at like 9 a.m., gets a guy who works all day, gets a guy at like noon who works through the rest of the day, gets a guy at like 4 o'clock, an hour before the shift is done, and he pays them all the same amount. And
That is, I mean, I haven't done the study on how the original audience would have taken that. I'm guessing it'd be at least somewhat similar to me. I feel outraged.
yeah,
I don't like that.
if you're the guy who got hired at 9, you're really annoyed. that
You've worked all day for the
you
exact
worked
same amount as
7
the
more
guy for
hours
an
than
hour.
this other dude, and he's making as much as me. Now, what's interesting about that story is the dude who got hired at 9, I don't know if he knew what he was going to be getting paid for the day, but he presumably agreed to it at 9.
Yes.
And it's only the generosity of the master later on that offends him. So there's a whole sermon in there about being offended by generosity. But is that situation unfair? They're getting paid at different rates. That seems unfair.
Wildly different.
Yeah, that seems unfair.
For no reason, but it's similar to Schmitz.
Yeah.
But for no reason, then the master, the owner of it, that
His will.
wants.
Yeah. Yeah, presumably one guy's not like way more qualified or like has way more experience. If I got hired to do the same job as somebody else, and we both had the same experience, but they got paid more than me, that I would find that to be unfair. That would bother me.
How about growing up in a broken home versus someone who did not? It was unfair that I had this lot in life.
That doesn't immediately scream unfair to me. That screams unfortunate, but not unfair.
And just for a moment, can we sneak in just the word justice again? Is it unjust that I grew up in a broken home?
Well, going back to the rightly ordered cosmos thing, I do want to say, in the grand sense, it is unjust that any of that's taken place, that relationships have fallen apart or whatever.
Gotcha. Okay.
But not the justice doesn't, the injustice isn't in the fact that you experienced a broken home and I didn't. That's not where I find that.
Now, so I'm not very tempted at all these days to like rely on fairness as a helpful concept.
What about as you manage your family with your kids and how you raise them? Surely they outcry when things are unfair.
That's true. Let me think about that. Yes. So, or at the very least, to be really careful in how the complaint of unfair is being used when you might be misapplying or misunderstanding what the standard is for equal treatment.
Can you give an example? Yeah.
Yep. So we did a whole episode on the show, The Good Place, but it's kind of like caricaturing / investigating what different versions of the afterlife look like. Okay. And there's this character called the Judge, I think.
Yeah.
And she gives the 4 protagonists an opportunity to enter into heaven or the good place, so to speak. You have to pass a test. Okay. But for each person had a wildly different test that, so Chidi, who struggled with making decisions, simply had to pick a sweater to attend the ceremony or something.
That was his great
or
challenge.
Or like a hat or something.
Yeah.
The kind of ditzy sports guy had to like not pick the Jaguars in a game of Madden or something.
Yeah.
I forget what the other 2 were, but the one like
She had to not go in any doors
Rich
where
girl.
people were talking about her.
Yeah. Super interesting and clever. But were the tests all fair? I mean, they were not the same.
Different tests.
I think we have to make room for that in our vision of fairness, that it may not be the same. But there was something the same. There might be elements that are not the same. But at the higher level, there was sameness when it came to the motivation or the idea behind it, which was overcome that which is most difficult for you. Okay, now everyone was being judged by that standard, but it looked different.
Because people are different.
And how it played out. So it's just a word of caution to be careful by saying things are unfair
Just because they look different.
when you might not be looking at the right order of analysis.
Okay. I'm on board with you there.
Which I think speaks to the both of our cases that we gave, the parable of the workers in the vineyard and my more crass one of the Schwitz. In both cases, there's an individual who does have this standard of by my will and operates according to that. And on that rubric, however spinning weather veiny it is, that's...
Yeah. I feel like there's problems there, though. Like,
It wasn't principled.
yes. Or if you go up any level of abstraction enough, you can find somebody whose will it is for it to be that way. Like, that just seems like a cop-out fallback. You could arrange your family in such a way that your kids were being treated very differently, but then when they complain to you, say, well, actually, you're all being treated by the standard of how does dad feel about you? And I don't feel good about you right now, or whatever, you know? No, I am being fair. I'm treating you all the same way.
And maybe that's where maybe that is my suggestion then. Maybe that's the terminus of that word. And maybe we need a new word now to talk about the outrage of it. Maybe that is justice. Maybe you could be fair and unjust at the same time.
Wow.
Is that possible? And I don't want it to just be like it's a debate over what words mean.
Yeah.
But I think we are getting to, but we use these words a lot and it'd be nice to know what we did mean by them. And it communicates something. And particularly what's pernicious is then, so justice means fairness, means equality, means equity. That's the train of thought that is permeating the culture that I think is pernicious.
Yeah, definitely justice and fairness can't be the same thing. Because I could imagine, maybe this is a really dumb thing to say.
Yeah, try it.
I can imagine a really cruel prison warden who treats all of his prisoners fairly in that he beats all of them
Exactly.
8 times a day.
Yes.
Exactly the same amount. But the fact that he's doing that
It's all unjust.
is unjust, right? Okay.
That's great. That was a great example. Well
Not
done.
dumb. Hooray. Yeah. So those two words can't be used synonymously. It's possible for things to be fair, even to be equitable, or to be equal, but unjust. At least there's one example where they can be. Everyone's being equally tortured.
Yeah, that's great.
Is that helpful progress? I don't know.
That is good. Okay. So maybe we can, where to go from here? I was tempted to now talk about social justice or different ways that the term justice gets manifested in our common discussions. Maybe we're not ready for that yet. Maybe we can talk about distinguishing justice as right order versus another kind of justice. Maybe, where I come from, there's a lot of talk about rights and duties. That when you've been unjust, you have violated somebody's rights. Are those concepts related at all to you? Or
Of justice and rights?
for instance, just maybe piggybacking on that example of the warden, what makes it unjust? What made you say that?
Well,
Not
they
just
are
bad,
all, yeah.
a bad thing.
The justice system has already sentenced them to prison. That is their punishment. The beatings are not part of your job description and are over and above what you've been hired here to do, which is keep the prisoners in their cells. So to beat them seems really
Like, what's
uncalled for.
the what is the truth maker, or what's making that wrong, or making it unjust, and are those different?
See, I don't know how to answer other than I'm appeared to that way.
Wow. Okay. So the one way to go could be it's unjust because it violates a right. When everyone's rights are respected, then you have justice.
Yeah, but for some reason, the language of rights makes me nervous.
Oh.
It's probably worth exploring with my therapist or something.
You don't think anyone has a right to anything?
Listen, you can't put me in the hot seat like that. I don't know. I'm flagging some caution as I head into rights territory. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we have as many rights as we like to think we do.
Mm-hmm. Let's start with the typical 3 from our land here of the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness or property, depending on the version.
Listen, I want those things for everybody.
Do you, Tony, have a right to life?
That's not clear. It's not clear to me that I do.
Wow.
Well, where would I look to find that? How do I know that I do? I didn't. The whole thing from the get-go has been a gift to me. Didn't ask for consciousness, didn't ask for life, didn't ask for a body. It's all been given, and it could all be taken. In what sense am I owed it? In what sense do I have a right to keep it? That's where I'm having trouble. And that's not to say, as I think about other people, I want everybody to experience life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Yes, I do want to protect that too. I see there's problems if I say people don't have a right to life. That leads to huge problems. But in
what way? That's important. Let's think about that. Because you just employed a helpful diagnostic tool of reductio ad absurdum.
Yeah.
You've assumed the opposite, and that leads to something contradictory. Or
because then I'm wondering what stops wanton killing. They do seem tied to me in some way.
What?
The justice and rights seem tied to me. I'm just not sure about which rights exist. Mm-hmm. And
is there one?
I don't know how I would find out.
Is there some other right that is more obvious to handle than the life one that we could talk about, or is that a good test case? To me, I almost think that is, if I don't have that one, the whole thing is meaningless.
I think I have the right to direct my attention wherever I want.
Oh.
Something that only I get to control. That seems like that's something I should have a right to. Something very internal, no matter what may happen to my body or my circumstances.
And what do you mean when you say that I have a right to it? What can you say more about when you're saying the word right?
No, I don't think I can.
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling just even to know where I would look. What would I look at to ground any of my rights? What can I point to and say, there it is, my right? How do you back up the claim you have any rights?
Yeah.
Other than just like, no, we take that on brute. Everyone has a right to life. We just have all agreed that. Mm-hmm. Is that the answer?
No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe like a really dyed-in-the-wool social contract person. But, well,
I don't know. Maybe I'm being unnecessarily cautious here, but
I think typically it has spawned out of some kind of theism.
Right, an Imago Dei type.
The type of thing that you are warrants a certain kind of treatment. And that is a brute.
The type of thing that you are warrants a certain kind of treatment.
And virtue of the type of thing that you are, a conscious agent with goals and a future, you have a claim right against everyone else to not take your life. So a claim right would be you demand that a certain good be maintained or even bestowed upon you. You make a claim on others for that. Mm-hmm. There's a debate about whether everyone else has a correlate of duty, but let's just say yes for now because that's easiest to understand. Or so for every claim right there's a correlate of duty on my part to not take your life. Mm-hmm. And this is one way of talking about the basic building blocks of morality.
Right.
Is duties and rights, which is like the deontologist view. Versus consequence and forward-looking morality, where all I'm trying to do is maximize the good and minimize the bad, and looking down the corridor of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember this discussion from the Mountain Road episode.
Yep. And so I think it's coming up again here, and we would say you have a right to life, and by that it's a claim right of the good of maintaining the continuation of your physical life going on against everyone else. Like everyone else has to respect that good.
Look, I don't want to derail us too far.
Yeah.
But I do recall in that conversation you saying that you lean more towards the consequentialist view because all the other views end up being that anyway. So when you say you have a right to life and nobody to kill you because it will be good for you to continue, you end up then pointing to a consequence. I'm wondering, how does the consequentialist think about rights? Do they factor in at all? Are they still, or is the only one who acknowledges rights the deontologist?
There's something called there's a difference between act and rule utilitarians or consequentialists, and this is probably getting us too far afield, but a rule utilitarian would be more favorable toward rights talk because we adopt certain ethical principles because of their utility. Okay. Rather than looking at individual actions for their utility. And so in which case a rule about respect people's right to life would be justified on consequentialist grounds, where you should want a society that has these rights rather than appealing to the type of things that people are.
And then, yeah. Yes, I think so. Is that
somewhat helpful?
That is helpful, actually.
Okay.
So in that view, the rights become something we sort of all agree to maintain. Because
but it's not. But it goes beyond just like we all got together and agreed upon it in a kind of subjective, arbitrary way.
That's what I'm wondering.
It's not that. It's saying literally the world will be better by these objective measures, based on like the consequences that'll come from having a society that has rights.
That believes in rights.
I mean, I guess so, and plays it out and upholds them and defends them. So that's a very different justification than saying like you are made in the image of God and you are just owed certain courtesies.
Yes.
Based on that type of thing you are.
Yeah, it is different.
It could have turned out on the consequentialist view for it not to be that way, to respect rights. But it just happened not to, you know?
Yeah.
And so we'll respect them. Just different justifications for it.
Okay. I'm sorry, man.
No.
I feel like I really derailed us, but I'm trying to genuinely learn here. And I didn't expect to balk so much at your question about rights. I didn't expect that to be a stumbling block for me.
It's certainly a debate about to what which rights you actually have, if you do have them. I mean, the three it's the Declaration of Independence are a pretty good starting place.
Yeah.
The right to life, the right to liberty, to live your life in the absence of government coercion, and the right to pursue happiness as you see it. As long as, of course, you aren't violating the other two.
Yeah. That's my head immediately went to serial killer. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So that gets really interesting then. And that's fine. It's a conversation. That's okay if there's rabbit trails. So a lot of times you'll hear, a big talking point is a right to healthcare.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Let's talk about it. So why think that anyone has a right to healthcare?
Well, my gut says it's tied to this right to life thing.
You have a claim right for someone to not take your life. But now this is different in that it's a claim right against other people's resources to make sure that your life lasts longer. That's a little bit different.
It is different. Do rights and responsibilities always go hand in hand? Your right is someone else's responsibility? Sorry,
that's what I was saying a moment ago. Yep. I think it would be too complicated to try to tease out that no. But maybe we can go there.
I'm just thinking, if
Not someone specific like Paul.
okay,
But it's to the populace.
because I can imagine, say I'm very wealthy and I'm walking down the street and I see someone who has had their arm cut off and it's bleeding and they need immediate medical attention, but they can't afford it. I feel like in that situation, I would feel a moral obligation to help this person, to use some of my resources, whatever they happen to be, to get this person
That's great.
help to prolong their life.
Okay.
Great. That's a responsibility that I want to say, an ethical obligation I would feel in that moment. Could it be that the people who say everyone should have a right to health care, isn't there some analogy to be drawn there between, like, there are people suffering who don't have the means to prolong their lives through receiving medical care. There are others who would be able to help these people get the medical care. Do they have a responsibility to help this person prolong
You're
their
right.
life?
I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
I do. And that's an important point. Maybe I shouldn't have tried to nudge it away too quickly. Let's say this. I think, I could be totally wrong, but I think anyone engaging in ethics at all is going to acknowledge that there are moral responsibilities.
Yeah.
I mean,
I hope so.
I don't really know what the whole project is without that. I mean, I get that there are moral nihilists and think that all the categories are wonky, but just that you ought to do things is the subject matter of ethics.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. So you just brought up, when you did that, you brought up a feeling like you had a moral ought. Okay. At that point, you're not committed to any particular theory of what accounts for that ought or what makes it the case that you really ought to.
Yeah.
It could be to produce more good in the world. It's good when people don't have blood squirting out of an open wound. That's more of like a consequentialist view, right?
Yep.
So what you're saying is, does something about that feeling, that urge of responsibility, commend the rights view in any way?
Right. Does it indicate that there is a right there somewhere?
I don't think so. No. It could. Maybe the rights view is true, and that's what undergirds your responsibility. What's making you feel that way is that, in fact, when people are in this grave of danger, they have a claim right against you for your resources to help.
I wonder.
So, I mean...
And if that's true for one person bleeding out on the street, why isn't it true for everyone who needs medical attention?
Well, sorry to cut it short right there. This is what turns out. This is going to be a long one. It's going to be a 2-part episode. So be sure to tune in next week for part 2 of this episode on justice. If you like to...
You were doing so good, man. You were doing great.
If you like to read about ideas, that's cool too. You can subscribe to our blog at opentotruth.com/subscribe or /blog. A pretty cool way to share this with your friends instead of just saying, here's an hour-long episode.
Yeah, no.
Here's a 3-minute blog.
Yeah, sneak them with the blog.
Yep.
Yeah. If you've got something to contribute, a question, by all means, leave a comment on this video. We'll respond to that, or reach out to us through email, and we'll see you for the second half of this discussion next week. Stay curious.